Wow, big thanks to Celinda for that wonderful presentation. Next, I want to introduce Mayra Jacqueline Ferreira, or Jackie for short, who recently stepped into the role as Executive Director of the National Women's Health Network. A foreign-born woman raised in the Dominican Republic, Jackie comes to this work with valuable lived experience and a passion for creating a more just world. She is a veteran of the United States Air Force, served more than 10 years in various roles at Physicians for Reproductive Health, and is respected in the public health field as a dynamic leader and pivotal strategist. Jackie has worked tirelessly to advance women's reproductive rights and access in underserved population areas in both the US and abroad. But I'll let her tell you for herself. Without further ado, here's Jackie.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Mayra Jacqueline Ferreira. I go by Jackie. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am the Executive Director of the National Women's Health Network in Washington, D.C. Since 1975, the National Women's Health Network has improved the health of all women by developing and promoting a critical analysis of health issues to affect policy and support consumer decision-making. We are supported by a consumer membership 81,000 strong across all 50 states. We wear many hats because the needs are great. We are policy analysts. We are FDA watchdogs. We are fierce advocates for sexual and reproductive justice. And we are beacons of support for grassroots health activists across the nation. I am here today to talk to you about the importance of accessible and affordable healthcare for all women and what high impact policies legislators like you can champion to continue to expand healthcare access. Before we get into the policy recommendations, I am going to share a little bit about my lived experience as an immigrant, an Air Force veteran, and a single mother of color. Intersections of my identity that I hope will help me frame the health access problems we are facing and their potential solutions. I was born and raised in the Dominican Republic. I grew up witnessing the effects of colonialism and the disparities that existed between race and class firsthand. For instance, my grandfather owned a veterinary clinic and would often give poor people animal medicine. Why? Because they could not afford to see a doctor. Just as I saw him save many lives, I also witnessed many deaths from infections, fevers, lack of immunizations, and general poverty. From a very young age, I recognized these social determinants of health. It did not take a rocket scientist or even an adult to observe that if you had access to clean water, nutritious food, and adequate shelter, you were usually healthier than those who did not have the same. Growing up in the Dominican Republic, I also learned what it meant to live in a close-knit, resilient community. The women there, women like my invincible mother, took care of each other. They delivered each other's babies, crafted home remedies for any and all ailments, and created villages to raise children like me against sometimes impossible odds. When I was 15, my parents both secured jobs in New York City, and we soon moved to Bushwick, a neighborhood in Brooklyn. My parents believed in the American dream. Come, work hard, and you can give your children a better life. Our family's income was low enough for us to qualify for Medicaid and supplemental nutrition assistance. However, not all of our neighbors and fellow immigrants had access to these services. Many worked in factories and had no health insurance at all. I saw them repeatedly go to work very ill because they could not afford to take a day off work, or simply because they could not pay out of pocket to see a doctor. Once again, I saw my fellow Dominican families and friends rely on each other to fill these gaps by sharing antibiotics and medicines. I remember translating instructions and side effects for them from English to Spanish, all the while feeling horrible that they rationed medicine because of lack of money. I was shocked that in my parents' America, the same thing was happening as where I grew up. Poor people suffering worse health due to the types of jobs they had, the food they could afford to eat, the lack of medicine, and all the other things that contributed to their bad health. Despite persistent poverty and the violence, racism, and over-policing that made our Brooklyn neighborhood feel more like a war zone, I excelled in school. I received several scholarships to attend college. While a junior at Barnard, I joined the US Air Force as an aeromedical specialist, excited about the stability, income, and sense of purpose that military service would provide. The Air Force was another first-rate education in the current flaws of our healthcare system. For instance, I knew of 3 enlisted women who were sexually assaulted, but who were too afraid to report the incidents and seek medical care. Why? Because their attackers were high-ranking officers. Another colleague of mine got pregnant, and we all chipped in personally to help her go from Texas to California for a termination because there was no access to the procedure on base. The Dominican Republic, poverty in America, the Air Force, these were all great training grounds in healthcare disparity, to be sure. But the capstone experience, the thing that really cemented my dedication to expanding sexual and reproductive health access, was my personal experience of motherhood. I learned I was pregnant as 28. And as soon as I found out, I promptly left my controlling husband and filed for divorce. My pregnancy was already high risk because of fibroids. So imagine my terror when I was told I was going to lose my health insurance. You see, I was working as a research associate at Columbia University. As soon as I announced that I was pregnant, I was sent home on disability because I was working with radiation, and my boss deemed it dangerous for me to be exposed during pregnancy. Disability only paid a percentage of my salary, and so I had to apply for food stamps and temporary assistance for needy families to make ends meet. In a flash, I went from an employer-based insurance plan to Medicaid. This significantly reduced my choices in providers. And actually, I had to stop seeing my perinatologist who did not accept Medicaid. Eventually, I was lucky enough to find a Dominican doctor at Columbia University who could take me. But overall, my pregnancy was extremely stressful, and I received subpar care throughout, which I am sure contributed to my difficult birth. Legislators, talk about a long and winding road. But all these roads, all these experiences, and the knowledge I've gained to date have shaped my vision for the future. This vision is ambitious, but it is not impossible. My fellow change makers, I envision a world where healthcare is deemed as much an inalienable human right as life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I envision a world where this right is equally guaranteed to all people without regard to race, gender, ethnicity, or income. And make no mistake, your actions are absolutely essential to making this vision a reality. And because I know you're an ally in this fight, I want to present you with 4 policy recommendations you can act on right now for a healthier and more just future. The first recommendation is to support a version of the Build Back Better budget reconciliation bill that includes all of President Biden's healthcare access priorities. Specifically, the National Women's Health Network supports a version of this act that closes the Medicaid coverage gap for 4 million people across 12 states, including more than 800,000 women of reproductive age. That's 800,000 women who won't have the stress, vulnerability, and subpar care that were harsh realities of my pregnancy. We support a version of the bill that gives Medicare the power to negotiate for lower drug prices and passes this savings down to consumers. People my mother's age, pillars of their communities who desperately need their government working for them rather than against them. And finally, we support a version of the bill that expands Medicare benefits to include vision, dental, and hearing coverage, because eyes, teeth, and ears are all parts of the body needing care. All three of these components are tremendously popular among voters of all parties, and all three components will extend access to healthcare for millions of Americans. The second recommendation is to support the groundbreaking and equitable maternal health provisions in the Build Back Better reconciliation bill. In the richest nation on earth, moms are dying at the highest rate in the developed world. And the crisis is most severe for Black moms, who are dying at 3 to 4 times the rate of their white counterparts. To address the maternal health crisis in America, Representatives Lauren Underwood, Representatives Alma Adams, Senator Cory Booker, and members of the Black Maternal Health Caucus recently introduced the Black Maternal Health Momnibus Act of 2021. And along with allies like the National Women's Health Network, fought for its inclusion in the reconciliation bill. The Momnibus builds on existing legislation to comprehensively address every dimension of maternal health. Importantly, the Momnibus will study the unique maternal health risks facing pregnant and postpartum veterans, and support veteran maternity care coordination programs. As a veteran and a single mother, this provision would have ensured me better health outcomes. The Momnibus will also grow and diversify the perinatal workforce and provide more funding to community-based organizations, working to improve maternal health outcomes and promote equity. Think of what this would have meant for me and the thousands of women like me who had to stop seeing a trusted perinatologist because of gaps in coverage. I was lucky to find that Dominican doctor. Many do not have the luck, knowledge of the system, and privilege of position that I had at that time. And it is for them that this provision needs to pass. Thirdly, the Momnibus provides for critical investments in social determinants of health. Determinants like housing, food access, poverty, racism, and all the other factors I saw hindering my neighbors, both in the Dominican Republic and Brooklyn. These are just a few of the Momnibus's important provisions. I urge each of you to review the full 12 and to use them as models for state laws and regulations back home. The third recommendation is to do whatever you can to ensure that the Women's Health Protection Act becomes law. The National Women's Health Network knows that equal access to abortion care everywhere is essential for social and economic equality, for reproductive autonomy, and the right to determine our own lives. This was obvious to the Dominican women of my childhood who tried by any means necessary to help the younger girls bring down their periods and terminate unwanted pregnancies. And it was obvious to me as an adult when I helped my Air Force colleague get to California for her abortion. Anti-abortion state lawmakers have recently passed a record number of restrictive laws, making abortion care extremely difficult to access for many people, despite constitutional protections. The right to abortion is not real if only certain people can access it. Restrictions on abortions fall hardest on Black and Indigenous people, other people of color, immigrants, low-income people, and LGBTQAI+ people. Ensuring that all people have access to the full range of reproductive health care, including abortion care, is an essential part of addressing racial injustice and other inequities in our healthcare system and building a more just and equitable society. The Women's Health Protection Act is federal legislation that will protect the right to access abortion care throughout the United States. It eliminates many medically unnecessary restrictions and bans on abortions, such as mandatory waiting periods, biased counseling, and 2-trip requirements. The House passed the Women's Health Protection Act this month, but this faces an uphill battle in the Senate. The National Women's Health Network implores you to fight hard for its passage, and thanks Will alumni Representative Judy Chu, Representative Lois Frankel, and Senator Tammy Baldwin for sponsoring this very important legislation. The final recommendation is to build relationships with trustworthy, evidence-based health groups like the National Women's Health Network. This is so important because, as a physician friend of mine used to say, we don't know what we don't know. So when a novel virus or a new drug arrives, you as public servants need to be prepared and confident that you can make good decisions on behalf of all people. Organizations like the National Women's Health Network can help you stay reliably informed. Our doors are open. We are 100% independent from big pharma, insurance companies, or medical device companies, and are beholden only to our consumers, people just like you and me trying to stay healthy in these trying times. We take our cues from rigorous science, not money, politics, or ideology. We will do everything we can to assist you as we work together to build a healthier world. My remarks and other resources will be available to you in the conference app. Special appreciation to the Women Legislators Lobby Group for including the National Women's Health Network in this very important conversation. Thank you all for your time and for your attention today.